Hello everyone and welcome back. In this lecture, we're going to quickly cover some more URL mappings methods. So as we continue on throughout the course, we're going to be dealing with mapping URLs quite a bit. There are several ways of doing this, so I want to briefly touch upon another way. But first off, let's review what we've done in the past. Previously, we showed a very direct mapping that imported the views.py file directly into the urls.py of your project. So you're connecting your views of your application to the urls.py file of the project itself. Now what we want to do is show you the ability of using the include function that you can import from a Django module. The include function allows us to look for a match with regular expressions and link back to our application's own urls.py file. That way, each application has its own urls.py file. As a quick note, we'll have to manually add in this urls.py file because when you start your application, it doesn't automatically create one for you. Unlike when you start your project, it does create the urls.py file for the project. So what we would want to do is add the following to the project's urls.py file. We'll add that first line, which basically imports that include function, and then where it says the URL patterns list that we've worked with before, what we will do is call the URL function from before, and then add in a regular expression as a first argument. And basically what this regular expression does is it just says, okay, look at your domain name slash, and then whatever that string is in the first regular expression slash, and then call the app URLs from the include function. And this will all make a lot more sense when we actually code this out later on. But just to touch upon what I just explained, basically what this does, it's allowing us to look for any URL that has this sort of pattern, www.domainname.com/first_app, or whatever you happen to have put there in that first regular expression. In this case, I'm just calling it what the application was called, first_app/. And then if we match that pattern, what happens is the include function basically tells Django, hey, go look at the urls.py file that's inside of the first app folder, not the urls.py file that's inside of the project. And basically this might seem like a lot of work, especially for such a simple mapping, but later on we really want to try to keep our project's urls.py file clean and modular. That way we want to set the reference to the application instead of listing them all in the main urls.py file. So you can easily plug and play with your application since everything is modular now and the URLs are inside the actual application. So let's quickly walk through an example of all of this just to show how it all works. And as a quick note, we've covered everything in part 1 of Django's official tutorial. So after this lecture, you may want to go visit part 1 of that official tutorial and browse through it. You can check the resource for a direct link to part 1 of Django's official tutorial. Alright, with that said, let's jump to Atom and actually code out everything that I just explained. Okay, so here we are at Atom. The first thing we want to do is actually check out our original urls.py file from our first project and import what we need to have there. So previously we just said from first app import views, and then we called using the URL function a regular expression here that just said, okay, put in the views.index in case you ever get anything just to the domain name. What we will do now is add in another URL call here and put in a regular expression with an extension of this. And basically what it's going to say is something like first_app/, and then we're going to use the include function. In order to use the include function, I need to import it. And I can do from Django.conf for configuration.urls import include. And then with this function, I can actually now just pass this in as a second argument, include, and then I'm going to call my first_app.urls, and it takes it in as a string. And then finally, I want to make sure I have a comma here. Okay, let's save that. And then the next thing I want to do is actually create this urls.py file inside our first application. So I will say right-click on first app, create a new file, and call it urls.py, and it's going inside that first application I made. And now what we will do is essentially create almost like a mini urls.py file. It's going to have a lot of the same functionality we just saw earlier. So again, I will say from Django.conf.urls import URL, URL, singular. And then I will also say from first_app import views. And then I will say URL patterns is equal to, and I will do another call to URL. And now I'm just going to do a very generic regular expression. So I will just say for basically anything there. And I will call views dot, and let's just go ahead and call the index view right now. Later on, we'll test to make sure everything's working by creating a new view. And then I will say name is index. And we can have a comma here, so we can have this on 3 lines. Then I will just save that. And let's make sure this actually all worked. I'm going to say Python, manage.py, and then run the server. And you have to make sure you're in the correct directory to do this. I'm under that initial first_project folder. I'll hit enter, run my server, and let's make sure everything worked. Okay, so we have our server running. Let's copy and paste this. I will copy that and drag it over my Chrome browser. Let me bring that into frame. Here it is. Great. So that's what we actually had before. Now what I want to check to make sure it works is say /first_app, and then hit enter. And you notice it's working. We still get hello world. And just to prove that this isn't a coincidence or anything, let's do something that we haven't defined, /new page. Hit enter, and you will get a 404. This page has not been found. So clearly what we've done is working. We're able to actually direct some extension of our domain into the urls.py of the application. And this is basically what we're trying to get at as an overall idea, that I can have the application itself host its own URL patterns that I can then call from the urls.project or urls.py in the first project folder. So again, here I'm going to use this include functionality and then pass in as a string my application name .urls. And this we can actually call whatever we want. So for instance, let's say something like this, my new extension, and then I will say file save this, and let's go ahead and make sure this updated. I believe it updated right now, but let me just Control-C and restart it just to make sure everything worked correctly. And then let's bring back in that browser. Okay, so bringing in this browser again. Now let's go ahead and say first_app, hit enter. Great, so that's not working. So now let's actually try in this new extension I just made. So I can say my new extension, hit enter, and we can see it's calling hello world. So all of these basically are calling the same thing. So the main index page, that home page of just the domain name, is calling the exact same view of the my new extension page, which we can just, for simplicity, call first app. It's always a nice idea to try to get these regular expressions to match your application name. That way it's easier to reference so you don't get lost. It won't always happen, but it's a good idea to try to make things, at least in your own mind, readable so when you come back to them later, things make sense to you. But all right, that's all I really wanted to show you for this particular lecture. And again, the main idea here is that the applications can have their own urls.py file that we can then call from the project's URL patterns list. All right, hope you enjoyed that, and I will see you at the next lecture.